Imagine a moment where everything you once believed about yourself begins to fracture. The roles you play, the confidence you wear, the answers you thought you had. Suddenly it all dissolves, and in that silence, you meet something ancient, quiet, and terrifying. Your inner darkness. Most people run, they distract, deny, numb, escape, because we've been taught to fear the dark within. But what if it's not your enemy? What if that place, the part of you you've hidden, silenced, buried, is not the end, but the beginning? In this video, we journey inward, into that shadow. We'll explore the psychology of darkness, the hidden self, and the power that emerges when you stop running and start facing what's beneath the mask. Stay with me, because if you're brave enough to go to the bottom, you may just rise with something no one can ever take from you. You're not who you think you are, not entirely. You're a mosaic, part truth, part performance. Since childhood, you've learned to adapt, to please, to protect, to survive. You've learned what parts of you are acceptable and buried the rest. That voice that told you to cry, silenced. That anger when you were hurt, repressed. That creativity, that wildness, that weirdness, hidden away to fit in. And what happens to all those parts? They don't disappear. They fall into your unconscious, into what Jung called the shadow, and over time that shadow grows. Not evil, not broken, but forgotten, rejected, unloved. And here's the paradox. The parts of you that you fear the most are often the ones with the most power to heal, create, and transform. But first they must be faced, not with shame, but with courage. And that journey, it begins the moment the mask cracks, the moment you realize the life you've built may not be yours. That's not weakness, that's the moment of truth. There will come a moment, maybe it already has, when everything falls apart. You lose the job, you lose the person, the plan doesn't work, the belief breaks, and suddenly, you're not you anymore. You're not anyone. This is the void, the abyss, the place where the stories end and silence begins. It's terrifying because we've been taught that uncertainty equals danger, that not knowing who we are means we're lost. But what if this is where you truly begin? In that void, there are no rules, no expectations, just raw being. It's where the ego dies and the soul begins to speak. The voice you hear there, it's not cruel. It's honest. It doesn't flatter. It reveals. And if you can stand there, trembling, undone, open, and not flee, you'll meet someone you've never met before. Yourself. Not the version others crafted. Not the version you use to protect your wounds. But the real you. Scarred, human, whole. Everyone has monsters. Not the kind that hide under your bed, the kind that whisper in your head. You know them. The fears, the traumas, the guilt you thought you left behind, the shame you buried so deep, even you forgot it was there, the grief that lingers in your smile, the anger you swallow with a polite nod. We avoid them at all costs. We keep busy. We chase success. We numb with dopamine, distractions, productivity, because we think if we slow down, even for a moment, they'll catch up. But here's the secret they don't tell you. Those monsters you're running from, they're not here to hurt you. They're here to be healed. Your anxiety, it's a messenger. Your sadness, a signal. Your rage, a protector that was never taught how to speak gently. They're not your enemies. They're wounded versions of you, stuck in time, waiting to be seen. But you can't heal what you won't face. The more you avoid the monster, the more it grows. The more you suppress it, the more it leaks into your life, in self-sabotage, in broken relationships, in chronic emptiness. But the moment you turn and look it in the eye, something changes. You realize the monster is not a monster. It's just a younger you, scared, silenced, desperate to be heard. And when you stop judging that part of you, when you offer it compassion instead of fear, that's when integration begins. That's when you stop being divided against yourself And in that reunion, shadow and self, you become something new, whole. Alchemy. It's the ancient art of turning base metals into gold. But the real alchemists weren't just working with metals, they were working with the soul. And darkness? That was their starting point. The great paradox of transformation is this. Light doesn't come from avoiding the dark. It comes from walking through it. Every artist, every mystic, every wounded healer knows. Pain is not the end. Pain is the crucible. It burns away illusion. It strips you raw. It crushes everything false until only truth remains. That's why real growth often begins after heartbreak, after failure, after crisis, because only when the surface breaks can something deeper emerge. But we live in a world that fears breaking. We're told to hold it together. Smile, move on, stay strong. We're taught to plaster over pain instead of listening to it. But what if the breakdown is the breakthrough? What if every time your world falls apart, it's because a truer version of you is trying to be born? Carl Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This is the alchemy of darkness. You face the wound, you feel it fully, you let it teach you, and from it, you create something sacred. That sacred thing might be a piece of art, a decision to live differently, a new relationship with yourself. But whatever it is, it only becomes real when you stop resisting the dark and start listening to it. That's the gold. That's the power. That's the truth that no one can sell you, but you can find if you're willing to descend. Every great story begins with a fall. The hero doesn't rise first. They descend into the underworld, into the belly of the beast, into the silence of their own brokenness. This isn't failure. This is initiation. Descent is not the opposite of progress. It's the part no one talks about, the part where everything that no longer serves you is stripped away. In mythology, this is the journey of Orpheus, of Inanna, of Christ, of Dante. In psychology, it's the dark night of the soul. In your life, it's that moment you don't think you'll survive, but somehow you do. Why is this necessary? Because you cannot carry your old self into your new life. Who you were cannot walk where you're going. The descent shatters the false identities. It humbles the ego. It reveals what is essential. And in that sacred destruction, you're invited to become something real. But here's the thing about descent. It's not clean. It's not linear. It doesn't come with a map. It will feel like loss, like madness, like you've forgotten who you are. But what's really happening? You're being emptied so that you can be filled with truth. And when you emerge, because you will, you'll do so with scars, not trophies. But those scars, they'll be sacred. They'll be proof that you met your shadow and lived, that you didn't turn away, that you descended and rose, not as who you were, but as who you were meant to become. You've descended. You've faced the dark. You've felt the breaking. Now comes the part no one teaches us, integration. Because transformation isn't just about the fire, it's about what you do after the flames die down. Too often we survive the descent, but return to our lives as if nothing happened. We pretend, we patch things up, we move on, but you're not the same, and you're not meant to be. The pain you faced, it changed you. The truths you've uncovered, they want to live through you now. That's what integration means. Bringing the parts of yourself you used to fear back into the light. Letting the part of you that once screamed in silence now speak. It means learning to love your shadow, not to excuse it, but to understand it. Your anger, it's a protector. Your grief, it's a memory of love. Your fear, it's a signal that something precious is at stake. When you stop rejecting these parts, you become whole. You stop being fragmented, torn between who you show the world and who you are inside. You start to live in alignment. You start to walk into rooms with presence, not performance. You start to choose from intuition, not fear, and others will notice. Not because you're louder, but because you're clearer, grounded, solid, real. But here's the truth. Integration isn't a one-time act. It's a lifelong practice. You will forget. You will fall back into habits. The shadow will whisper again. But now you know the way back. And every time you return to your truth, you strengthen it. And that is how healing becomes power. What happens when you no longer need to pretend? No more performance? No more carefully crafted identity? No more masking your fear behind ambition, your sadness behind smiles, your confusion behind confidence. Just you, raw, honest, free. It sounds terrifying, because it is, but it's also the most liberating feeling in the world. We spend so much of our lives playing roles: the achiever, the good child, the tough one, the selfless helper, the always in control. And sometimes we forget we're even acting. But behind every role is a person, a soul, a story that longs to be told truthfully. When you shed the mask, you don't become weaker. You become more powerful. Because no one can take anything from you when you're no longer pretending. No one can blackmail a person who's already owned their shame. No one can control someone who has made peace with their fear. That's the power of authenticity, not perfection. Presence. You stop chasing approval and start following purpose. You stop molding yourself to fit in and start expanding to be who you are. Yes, some people will leave. Not everyone can hold space for truth, but the ones who stay, they'll love the real you. Not the version of you that performs for love, but the one that simply is. And in that space, where masks fall and truth breathes, something beautiful happens. You finally feel at home in your own skin. Not because everything is fixed, but because nothing needs to be hidden anymore. That's the real gift of the descent. Not power, not glory, but peace. By now, maybe you've realized something. The darkness doesn't go away. It's not a problem to solve. It's not a phase to outgrow. It's not a villain to defeat. It's part of you. But here's the difference. You no longer fear it. You walk with it, not against it. You stop asking, how do I escape the abyss? And you begin asking, what does it have to teach me today? Because the truth is, the darkness is wise. It tells you when something is off. It shows you where you're still hiding. It holds the keys to your most powerful stories. If you're brave enough to write them, you don't have to be fearless to do this. You just have to be willing to sit with discomfort, willing to feel deeply, willing to move forward, even when you don't have the answers yet. And as you walk with the dark, something beautiful happens. You become a guide for others, not because you're above them, but because you've been below. You've been cracked open. You've felt the trembling. You've stood at the edge and survived. And now you can say to someone else, I know this place. I've been here. You're not alone. That's the gift the darkness gives. Not just to you, but through you. You become a vessel for healing, a mirror for truth, a reminder that pain is not the end of the story. It's the place the story gets real. So don't run from the dark. Don't numb it. Don't light 1,000 lamps to drown it out. Sit beside it. Breathe with it. Listen to what it has to say. And then keep walking, because now you're no longer walking afraid. You're walking awake. After the darkness comes the return, not to the world you knew, but to the world as it really is. Not as the person you were, but as someone reborn. You've walked through fire. You've faced your monsters. You've sat in silence and made peace with the noise inside your mind. And now you return, not as a victim, not as a warrior, but as someone integrated. The descent changed you, but the return, it's where you bring the change into life. You begin to see differently. You listen deeper. You speak with honesty, not performance. People may not notice at first. They'll think you're calmer, more grounded. But what they're sensing is something rare. You are whole. You're no longer ruled by the hidden, wounded parts of yourself. You're no longer afraid of your past. You've taken your pain and turned it into presence. That's real power. Not loud, not flashy, but steady. The kind of power that lets you say no when you need to. that lets you be still in discomfort, that lets you hold space for others because you've held space for yourself. The return isn't about perfection, it's about embodiment. You don't just know what healing looks like, you live it. You show up to your relationships, your work, your creativity with authenticity. You carry your darkness with dignity. And that's the real gift of this journey. Not that you got rid of your shadow, but that you befriended it. You gave it a place, and now it no longer controls you. You are not who you were. You are something deeper, something real, and that changes everything. So here we are. You've walked through the descent, you've faced the abyss, you've held your broken pieces in trembling hands, and somehow you've come through, not untouched, but transformed. Let me ask you one final question. What if the light you've been searching for was never out there at all? Not in the next book, not in the next person, not in the next success or approval or escape. What if the light was always inside you, but like a seed buried deep? It needed the darkness to awaken. It needed pressure to break open. It needed silence to hear itself. It needed the absence of who you thought you were to finally remember who you really are. That's what the darkness does. It strips, it shakes, it unmasks, and in that raw, terrifying undoing, it gives you back yourself. This is not a hero story. This is a human story. And now the invitation is yours. Will you live on the surface, chasing comfort and avoiding discomfort? Or will you live from the core, with all your fear, your fire, your tenderness, your truth? Will you keep hiding behind who you think you're supposed to be? Or will you stand fully seen, imperfect, alive, and unafraid? Because the darkness inside you, it's not your enemy. It never was. It was your beginning, your teacher, your portal back to the self you've always been meant to become. So now you know. The next time it comes for you, not as a punishment, but as a guide, you won't run, you'll breathe, you'll listen, and then you'll walk straight into it, not to be swallowed, but to awaken the light that's been waiting there all along. The light that is, and always has been, you.